I do seminars here and there, travel all over the world and do those in front of, I don't know, 100 people, 5,000 people. That has its own kind of dynamic, its own feel. Do lots of one-on-one talking with people on the phone, texting, emailing, in person, and that has its own feel. Sometimes I do one-on-one in front of a group, in front of a seminar, but I realized the other day that I don't ever do groups anymore. I pretty much learned most of real love in a real love group, and I don't participate in them. Mostly proximity and time, I think, but groups have a different dynamic because whoever is speaking interacts with the wise person, and the whole group kind of has an energy to it, supporting the person, sometimes listening, sometimes asking questions. Real love groups are just the coolest thing. So it occurred to me that we would do a real love group like I used to do them, where I would function as a facilitator. So we're doing we offered a real love weekend in June 7 and 8, and that was filled in no time, a couple of days. So now we're offering another real love weekend here in Rome, June 14 and 15. People will come here for 2 days. They'll arrive on a Friday. We'll do groups Saturday and Sunday. They'll go home on a Monday, and that will be fun. Just a different kind of experience. You'll have one-on-one time with me, you'll have one time with each other, and then you'll have the sort of indefinable group time, the group feel, which you really can't know what I'm talking about till you do it. So just letting you know about that. You can go to the website and look under events, I think, and you'll see it there somewhere. First question. Member says, by the way, this is a member who asked her question more than a week ago, but I go through the questions in the order that I get them, always members' questions first, and there are now getting to be so many great members' questions that this was the next question I was going to get to last week and didn't because I ran out of time, so get your questions in sooner. Love your questions. And the only reason it's helpful to get them ahead of time rather than live is that people often don't communicate very clearly what they're saying. So I can either figure it out or I can write and ask you what you meant. The victim book, says this member, says that people lie an average of 400 times a day. This is quite hard to believe, and I would appreciate some of these subtler examples. Yeah, I gotta say I found it a little difficult to believe at first too. And you read this statistic, you'd think if it all came from one study, which was at Boston College, you'd think that the numbers would be consistent, but they're not. In one place it says 300 to 400 times a day. Another place it says 3 to 5 times a minute. So let's just piddle with the numbers. Let's say it's 400 times a day to make it harder. And then let's take, out of 3 to 5 times a minute, let's take 5, because the math is easier. 3 into 400 is, who knows, broccoli. If it's true that we lie 400 times a day and 5 times a minute, then we'd only have to talk 80 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes. Not as quick at math as I used to be. And most people talk more than that. So this isn't really difficult to believe. It's how do we do that? What is a lie? So I'm going to give you just a few examples, and you'll be able to fill in the blanks in your own life or as you watch the people around you. So for example, somebody's talking to you and you appeared to be interested. Now, how could you do that 400 times a day? Easily. Somebody's talking and you go, And then a few seconds later you go, that's 2 lies. Or you lift your brows and go, I didn't know that, when actually what you're really thinking is, I couldn't possibly care less about that. That's 3 lies. And you can do that in the first 20 seconds. So pretending to be interested when we're not, we can do a lot. Somebody says, what's your major in school? And you say, or what was your major? Oh, I was a double major in philosophy and chemical engineering, which for those of you who don't know those two subjects would be an unusual combination. when the truth is that you took a single philosophy class and took it incomplete after 3 weeks. Because people do this, they really do. And one time the word chemical engineering crossed through your mind. And you didn't major really in either one, except that both of them sound cool. And I've seen people do this thousands of times. We say the things that would make us look good, that would make people approve of us. Somebody says, so what are you doing tonight? And you say, oh, schedule's packed. I have so much to do. You hear this one a lot. Almost never is somebody's schedule completely packed. So an example of the truth. I screwed around doing absolutely nothing with my friends last night till 3 in the morning. I don't even remember what I did. It was so stupid. And so tonight I'm so tired that I'm going to go to sleep. A lot of different ways to tell that lie. But essentially the lies are all variations on what are you doing? Or what will you be doing tonight? Oh, none of us likes to tell the truth. I'm going to be eating Cheetos and bear claws sitting in front of the TV watching football and lusting over the cheerleaders dancing on the side. Who would ever tell you the truth like that? When you consider what the truth is, you see how often we lie. Nobody tells the truth. Hardly ever. Do you have any children? And you say, yes, I have 2. And people say, people say things like, wow, that's a lot. And you respond with, yes, I find it very rewarding. I've always wanted to be a mother. And the truth is, you had no idea the second one was coming. It was a complete accident. You hate it. You have no idea what the heck you're doing as a parent. Now you're wondering what you were thinking and wish you could take them back to the secondhand store. So we say things that make us look like good parents, good workers, good husbands, good father, all of that stuff. And we inflate how well we're doing. We do it all the time. Ask people about their jobs. What do you do? There was a study done several years ago where they observed men who were simply mingling in a social gathering, a cocktail party or something. Turns out men cannot talk to each other for more than 5 seconds without asking, what do you do? And they don't mean, what do you do if there's a fire? Which fire escape do you take? They mean, what do you do for a living? How much money do you make? And how much prestige is associated with your job? When I had quit my job as a surgeon and I was writing for 5 years and making absolutely no money at all. People used to ask me, what do you do? And I'd say, I'm unemployed. And people would just walk away. No kidding. I'm a plumber. They'd walk away. We really judge people. So we say things like, well, I'm a computer programmer. And after you investigate a little more, it turns out that, well, the truth is I type information into a computer all day. I know a programmer, which isn't the same as being one. I know how to spell programmer. I know how to pronounce programmer. There are so many ways that we justify our lies. What do you think about Obamacare? And because you're talking to, and so you say, well, I hate it. It's stupid. And the truth is you're talking to a conservative, so you changed your answer. You're actually grateful for Obamacare because without it, you wouldn't have any health insurance at all. But you're talking to somebody who you respect, somebody whose opinion you would like to sway. And so you hate it because you know that they're conservative and they very likely hate it. We do this every day. Somebody says to you, I did whatever with my daughter yesterday. We went to do, what do they call it when you go and look at schools? Investigating colleges. There's a name for that. Campus shopping, I don't know. Would you like to see a picture of what we did? And we say, oh, sure. And then when the guy shows us a picture of his daughter, we go, oh, that is so cute. You just told 2 lies. No, you really didn't want to see the picture. And you think it's really stupid and you don't think she's cute at all because she looks like him. Somebody says, do you want to help with our volunteer event? Oh, I'd love to. 2 lies. No, you wouldn't really love to. And then the second lie is, you're not going to show up. And this doesn't count. These are just the lies we tell with our lips. This doesn't count the behavioral lies, which actually outnumber the verbal lies. So we act confident. We walk into a room with a little bit of a swagger. We act like we know what we're doing when we're terrified. That lie almost everybody tells all day. We pretend that we're not angry, or we say we're not angry when we are. The push-up bra, all by itself, a lie. See, look at me. I am just my cup overfloweth. No, it's not true. Makeup. I'm not saying you shouldn't wear makeup. No, don't write me letters. But we wear it to the point where we become almost another person. Go on Google sometime and type in before and after pictures, or what do they call it? Makeover pictures of celebrities. Some of these people are unrecognizable in real life. A lie. Now notice, I'm not saying you shouldn't lie. If you're a celebrity and you're paid to look a certain way, you kind of have to. Women who are known for their long flowing red hair can't suddenly shave their head and tattoo their foreheads. No, even if they want to. So they kind of have to go along with the lie that goes along with their living. I'm just saying how often we lie. Guys who act tough when they're afraid. So it kind of goes on and on and on, and we tell lies a lot. Actually, if you've got some examples of some, send them to me. I got an email that says, I saw in the news that some man had beaten and tortured a dog to death, the same breed as my dog. I've been crying for 2 days. How can you love people who don't deserve it? Now, take a breath, listen slowly because it's important to your happiness. First, it's not the dog you're upset about, my dear. Somebody else's dog you've never seen, never seen up to this point, never will see. It's all about the cruelty and pain you have suffered all your life. That's the only thing you'd cry about for 2 days. Really, trust me on this. I'm not happy when somebody's cruel to a dog or a bird or any living thing. I went hunting once, killed a squirrel and went, my boys wanted to go hunting. And so we went out in the backyard. In our backyard, you have to kind of just open the back window in their squirrel nests. And so I said, you want to go hunting? Great. So we went out, shot a squirrel, fell to the ground. We all cried, dug a grave, buried the squirrel. That was the end of the hunting. So not a hunter. I don't like it when animals are treated badly. But I would never cry for 2 days because I feel full. I feel happy. The 2 days of tears is about you. Now, let's talk about the guy who tortured the dog. Nobody does this kind of thing who isn't already in unbearable pain themselves. I feel far more sorry for the abuser than for the abusee, if that's a word, pretty much every time. The abusee has more chance of recovery, or escape, which would include death, than the abuser does. This is important stuff for you, kid. You are still very wounded. You need a lot more love than you're getting. So the real question is not about a dog. The real question is about you. What are you doing about getting the love you need? I happen to know you personally, and you just overflow with pain and anger. It has to stop. And you can't do this alone. I'm being so pointed because I know you. It just rolls off you like a dark cloud. So then, later the same day, I get another email. And you said, what you say makes sense. Every once in a while, I actually do make sense. You said, I'm doing a lot to get loved, but I can't make people love me. People often avoid me. I am misunderstood a lot. Oh, honey, you really are. Your pain and your anger are sometimes confusing, distracting, and overwhelming to people who are not prepared to love you as much as you need. You got to understand that. Your pain is not average. It just rolls off you, like I said, and it's more than most people can deal with. You confuse them. And when people are confused, they're almost always frightened when they don't know what to do. When people are lost, they get frightened. So they avoid you. They don't return your calls. You're writing me now because somehow you sense I'm not afraid of your pain or anger. I'm not better than anybody else. Just doesn't scare me. So you have to learn to find people who can love you in little bits, little bites, here and there. So, for example, how is your relationship with, and I could name any number of people that you know. She can love you, but not all the time, for the reasons that I just said. So don't give up on these people. If people can love you even once in a while, that's a whole lot more than nothing. You just have to keep remembering that you are not especially easy to love. I am not saying, not saying that you are not lovable. Just that your pain and anger make it difficult for an average wise person to know how to love you and to have the capacity to love you. You just overwhelm them. So then she named some people who would not accept her Facebook friend requests, for example, and who didn't return her calls. Then she continues, I feel pressure to explain to everybody that I'm growing and changing. I don't know, Greg, people just don't really like me. So again, listen to what I've said so far. It's not that you're not lovable. It's that your pain and anger are too much for most people. Remember that it's not about your being lovable. It's just that you're difficult. And other people don't have the experience, wisdom, talent, capacity to deal with you. It's them. So keep working on it so you can connect with people, so you get better at connecting, and so you become less frightening to the people that you're already connecting with, and accept whatever they offer you. Be more honest with them as you talk to them about how difficult you can be. Now, what would that look like? You'd get on the phone with somebody and you'd say, my name is Susie, and I've been told that I'm harder to love than most people. I can be kind of attacking. I can be blaming, critical. I can withdraw when I don't get my way. You just need to know that about me so it doesn't scare you. It's very disarming when you describe yourself in that way to somebody else. They tend to be less frightened. And so that will actually attract people, because most people don't know that you even realize how difficult you can be. So see the difference? If you're difficult and you admit it, that's really pretty disarming. They go, oh, well, she knows, so we're not scared here. But if you're really difficult and you come at them with both horns pointed forward and flames, out of your nose, and you deny that you're angry, they're going to feel both overwhelmed and confused, and they're not going to want to participate in a conversation with you, because they figure if you don't even see what you are, how could you possibly benefit from being loved? See? So it's disarming. Normally you blindside people. If you start with the truth, they'll be better prepared for you. See? I had a friend who, where this metaphor came from, it's been a lot of years, but I had a friend who raised hogs. And we'd have to get in the pen and wrestle them into a corner or wrestle them to the ground and give them vaccinations. And every once in a while, just to be just flat mean, he'd say, why don't you go take that one? He didn't warn me that this was the orneriest, meanest, nastiest hog in the entire farm. And so I'd go to give this hog a shot. And hogs are one of the few animals that, with no provocation at all, will attack you and attempt to eat you. He thought that was pretty funny. I thought it was less funny. But if I knew ahead of time that was the meanest hog in the farm, I was more prepared for it. And I could accomplish the task with much less hesitation or fear. So everything I just said to you, kid, is pretty important. And I would suggest that you actually try saying it back to me. So in another email, I don't know if it was the same day or another day, she wrote back and said this: I totally get it. I do. I didn't think I was unlovable. In fact, it's almost like I think I'm more lovable. Now, probably the rest of you like me right now are going, huh? If she's angry and difficult with people, how could she think she was lovable? So let's listen to this explanation because it's kind of clever. It's almost like I think I'm more lovable, so I should be able to act however I choose because I'm better than most people. That's very clever. Actually, very few people come up with that. I'm so arrogant, and that's a hard thing to say. So maybe when people try to help me, I just get annoyed because what they're saying is stupid and isn't helping me. My arrogance is how I survived, I guess, making people feel less than me. I'm not happy to say it, but the arrogance is worse than the anger. I think people can handle the pain and the anger. It's just how arrogant I am. That's cute, and it's clever, and it's tempting, but it's self-help foolishness. It's too convoluted. The more convoluted and complicated an explanation is, the less likely it is to be true. You think that you're arrogant, but that's not really it. It's a kind of demanding entitlement rather than arrogance. You are loved so poorly, so badly all your life, that now you have this inner sense that people must help you, and they must be smart enough, and they must be loving enough. So your pain demands help that is sufficient and immediate. See the difference? So your arrogance is less about your being better than it is about your being more needy and therefore deserving of help. The best help, without flaws, without mistakes. Nobody can screw up with you. So it's not, as kids would say in today's parlance, that you think you're all that, which is what arrogance would be. It's that you're in all that pain. That's what you're trying to describe. The more pain we're in, the more we think we have a right to demand that the whole world stop and everybody pays attention to us. If you go into an emergency room and you have a sliver under your finger, you don't scream at the top of your lungs. You wouldn't tend to, because I worked emergency rooms for 6 years. Help, help, I'm dying. But if you come into an emergency room and you're bleeding to death from a gunshot wound, you would tend to feel more entitled. And that's you. Later, you wrote again. You said, I don't know how you did that. Basically, you just said that nobody likes me. Well, not quite, but this was what you said. And yet, I have never felt better and more loved. Holy cow. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? You feel more loved because I'm seeing the real truth about you and still loving you. So, no BS, no faking, nothing superficial. What you want is not just coddling or pampering. You want the truth and love. That's why you felt what I said to you. I wasn't afraid to tell you the truth, and you felt it. So to everybody who's listening, to everybody who has aspirations to be a wise person, and pretty much we all get that opportunity whether we recognize them or not, being just nice is often harmful. We have to help people see what they're really doing and who they really are. People have to know that you see them when you love them, or it doesn't come across as sincere, and it won't feel like love to them. And that's what this woman is saying. I don't get this. You just told me that I was a pretty difficult person to love, and yet I feel happier. Whereas most of the time, people would be insulted by saying that. A coach wrote to me. Now, this is really pretty similar to the email we just discussed, but it has a slightly different slant, so I'm going to do it anyway. A while back, this coach says, I told Susie that she keeps using behaviors that drive everybody away from her, and then she blames them. Sound familiar? Many people won't even take her phone calls. I said she makes it very difficult for people to love her. Now she's telling people that I said she's not lovable. And at first I was annoyed. And then I thought, you deal with this kind of thing all the time. In fact, every single day. She was talking about me. She said, I get it now. I am not here to be popular. I'm here to help people. More exactly, you're here to love people and teach people. But, brilliant observation. I have told a number of people what you just told to this person, that they're difficult to love, like I just talked about in the previous email. Why do I do that? To help them see, primarily, that if I'm willing to wade through all the sewage that they spew out and the arrows they shoot at everybody, I must love them all the more. Otherwise, why would I endure it? I was talking to a lady just yesterday, and she was just being skeptical and difficult and stinky and resistant and So I said, finally, why am I on the phone with you? She said, well, because it's your job and you have to be. I said, you want me to prove that's not the case? She said, sure. I just hung up. She called back. I said, so try it again. Why am I on the phone with you? I don't know. Well, honey, you're just about as easy to love as a porcupine in fight mode. Well, thanks, she said. Well, no, I'm just telling you, dear, loving you is exceptionally difficult, which is why you don't have a single person in your life, which is why your children won't speak to you, which is why you have several ex-husbands, which is why your parents won't have anything to do with you, which is why nobody takes your phone calls. It's really difficult because you shoot everyone. She was briefly insulted, and I said, but I'm here. So what does that tell you? It took her about 8 more questions. Well, maybe you care about me. Yeah, maybe. So sometimes when we tell people that they're difficult, it simply wakes them up. It's a powerful thing to say. They're difficult, but here I am, loving you. And then there are the dedicated victims who use it like the client of this coach, who go around telling everybody that you said that they were unlovable. As coaches, it's our job to love, or as wise people, love and teach. What we cannot do is be afraid of whether teaching the right thing will offend or not. As soon as you're afraid of offending somebody, it's very unlikely that you will have the courage to tell them what they need to hear most. We care, now listen to the difference. We care about people's happiness. We care about their happiness, but we can't take responsibility for their happiness. Huge difference. Chasm, Grand Canyon difference. Sometimes people say, well, it sounds like a fine line. No, not at all. I care about your happiness a lot, but see, it's your happiness, and I'm not in charge of that. I'm in charge of mine. I may be able to add to yours, but I simply don't take responsibility for doing that. Notice, what do we do as wise people? Love and teach. Notice it doesn't say love and teach and make happy. No, just love and teach. And I deal with this pretty much every single day. Just yesterday, I said almost identical things, similar to this, to 2 women, almost the same. One was so moved that she cried and committed to get more love in her life, to finally learn to love her husband, who then called me and told me he was delighted. The other said she'd never talk to me again. So you do the best you can to love and teach, and some people will like it, and some people really, really won't. Last week I suggested that if you want to know if you're controlling versus just loving and teaching, sometimes it can be helpful to do a survey, to ask the people that you would tend to control. Ask a spouse, ask your kids. So I got an email from a member after that who said, now, if I ask my kids whether I'm still controlling, how do I know whether I'm controlling or they just don't like it that they have to do chores? Oh, that's a really good question. Because if you ask a child who is simply irresponsible, am I controlling when I tell you that you have to do your chores around the house? Almost every time the child will say, yes, you are. You should give me everything that I want. New car would be good? Sure. So it's a good question. What's the answer? Pay attention to their answer. If they talk about not liking the chores, you can, if listen careful, you can get the emphasis. They may talk about both, you and the chores. But if their emphasis is, I just don't think it's fair that I have to do see, that's the chores. Well, I don't like having to do the garbage. I don't like shoveling the cow barn clean. That's about the chores. Well, that means that they're just being lazy and irresponsible. If they talk mostly about how you assign them, how you treat them, it's probably about controlling. See? So when they say, well, every time you talk about my chores, you're angry. That's you. That's controlling. I hate it that I have jobs. That's just lazy. And I'll talk more about this in other examples of parenting inevitably. Here's a member who says, I'm going on a family trip with my kids that have all been living out of the house now for several years. So I'm assuming they're adults or really independent 6-year-olds. I'm feeling some anxiety about being with them again for a whole week and not being as happy and loving as I would like to be. I'm concerned that I will go back to being the jerk they've always known and not the happy, loving guy that I want to be. So do you have any tips? Sure. For one thing, don't be concerned. Because if you're concerned, you're afraid. And if you're afraid, what will happen is you will, without meaning to, do things to win their favor. You will buy them. You will enable them. And even though they'll like it at the time, if you say, why don't we go out and just buy all of you a new car? They will let you. Really. But they won't feel loved. So get rid of the concern and instead just be aware of yourself while you're around the kids. I mean, diligently, consciously aware. That's all. If you're feeling the slightest disapproval or disappointment or irritation, be aware of it and shut up. Don't worry about it ahead of time. Don't be afraid, just aware. Listen to yourself. That's a really hard thing to do. Most people are so caught up in their fears that they just react to things all day long. And at the end of the day, they realize they haven't made a conscious decision ever. You can do that just by slightly detaching and watching yourself behave. If you're irritated, you will not be watching yourself. We get too wrapped up in irritation and fear. But if we pay attention early on, we'll see the early onset of fear, disappointment, irritation. So observe yourself, listen, ask yourself what the goal of every single activity is. Is it the activity or is it an opportunity to love them? What do I mean by that? It's really common on vacations that we say, okay, we're going to go to the beach and we're going to have a picnic dinner and we're going to do blah, 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 blah. And if it starts to look like some obstacle is arising so that we can't say have a picnic or can't have dinner at all on the beach or can't go to the beach at all, we tend to get irritated because we're focused on the thing, the activity. Oh, how many family vacations have I seen ruined because the parents raced the kids around to accomplish the thing that they had to get done. Birthday parties, famous for this. Got to get the clowns there and the balloons and the cake and the and if all those things don't happen in exactly the right order, mom gets on a big screaming fit and just terrifies everybody for the entire afternoon. Well, if you're at a big screaming fit and you manage to get the balloons and the clown and the pony and everything there on time, and the kid is terrified of you, what did you accomplish? You pulled off the appearance of a birthday party, and you didn't love your kid. So same thing with your adult kids. Just be thinking all the time, what's my goal here? I just spent the weekend with my daughter, and we had a wonderful time. My daughter, her 2 kids, Donna was there, and there were several occasions when I thought, because it takes a whole day to travel up there and a whole day to travel back, and we were there for 2 days, and so, you know, in the old days I'd have gone, oh man, it takes as long to get up and back as it does while we're there, so we better make the most of the time we have while we're there. Don't do it. Nope. We have to fill every second. So we'd be sitting there and either just having fun or doing nothing and relaxing or actually learning something. We actually all learned some really important things together. And there would be some occasions when things were just kind of relaxing where I would think of something really brilliant that I could say and go, and that would just really ruin the overall tone of what we're doing. It would be another thing I could teach. I could go home and I could check off another really great thing that I'd taught as a father and would have ruined the trip. See? So that's why it's called love and teach, not teach and love. Do the loving first. Just pay attention to that when you're with your kids. They'll really kind of dig it. Or at least you won't be nearly as much a jerk as usual. Here's somebody who says, I have not had time to investigate the forum until now. There is so much to investigate. Frankly, I was really glad you said this. It really is kind of cool. Go look at the member benefits. They're huge and they're growing. Video clips that we're now starting to post every week. We did post one this last end of this last week, as I said I was going to do last Tuesday. We got the forum, we got blogs, we had all past videos, video chats, and daily coaching. We're adding stuff all the time. We're working at it. We're working at making the membership site something that you'll use for the rest of your life, that will actually change your life. I'm working on an index so that if, for example, you decide to look up beating children, how to do it properly without bruises, you can go to the index. You can look up children beating, properly, and you can find what video chats I talk about it in, and what daily coaching segments, and on and on and on. And eventually we're going to have all the video chats in writing, so that you can read them. Some people aren't as visual and oral, audio. They don't listen as well with their ears. Some people prefer to read. So we're just trying to make all the material of Real Love more accessible, trying to make it more of it, and cater to different learning styles. So you're right, there is so much to investigate. You continue. Sometimes I wonder where I should post what I want to say. Do I say it on Facebook? Do I send it to the questions for the Tuesday night video chat? Do I post them on the forum? It depends on what you want. So like, for example, if you go to the forum, you would tend to post it there if you want feedback from multiple people. Maybe you want viewpoints from lots of folks. So you have a particular question and you want it from the viewpoint of white people, black people, men, women, single people, married people. Wow, post it on the forum. And often if you post it on the forum, you'll get an answer sooner than if you wait an entire week for the video chat. Not always true. But I can't always get to all the video chat questions the week that they arrive. So there are advantages to the forum. The video chat, I answer them personally, and I tend to answer them with more completely than I would if I were doing it in writing on the forum, and more spontaneously. Now this could be considered an advantage or a disadvantage, but on the forum I wouldn't just suddenly break off into telling spontaneous crazy stories about raising my kids, for example, whereas here you get kind of whatever pops into my head. So you have to choose the advantages and disadvantages. Facebook, no clue. I post on Facebook every day some aphorism or blog, but I haven't the first idea how to go to a Facebook page of any kind and make a comment. So I don't know how to answer that one. But yep, lots of things to do. Here's a member who says, I notice that I crave touch. Not the kind that leads to sex, just to be held, to be stroked, to be petted, to nurtured. And yeah, of course you do. It's really affirming and connecting. It's the single thing after breathing and eating that infants like. So when did we outgrow that? We didn't. You said, I've avoided being touched for so long, though, because it's always seemed to lead to sex, or it's been confusing in some way. But then I found a couple of people in Real Love who have touched me, held me. I wonder if I like it too much. Kind of like liking air too much. But it depends. If you confuse the touching with love, in other words, if you think touching is love, that can turn into a problem. And I've actually heard stories of groups and actually seen people do this at seminars where they think the touching is the thing. And so they're draped all over each other and engaged in activities that look, well, kind of weird. Touching isn't love. Love just sometimes involves touching. Touching is a way of communicating love. If you recognize that, then it's not very likely that you're going to like it too much. You continue. It can also give me a sexual feeling, which confuses things for me. Well, yeah, sure, it would. We get touched by somebody who genuinely cares about us, and the touching communicates the caring faster and deeper. That's what touching does. So if somebody really does care about you, you watch. It's really easy to prove this. It's easier to communicate unconditional love to somebody in person while touching them than it is by email, for example. But the problem is that in the past, for many of us, the word love has been associated with romance, which is so often associated with sex on the screen, in books. When people have said, "Oh, I love you, baby," usually not an example of unconditional love. And so we kind of have a natural tendency to connect touching to sex because, well, it's been connected to sex all of our lives. Possibly the most famous early experiment ever in the early days with behavior involved a Russian scientist named Pavlov and training of dogs. Each time they were fed, I think it was meat powder, if I remember to be exact. Who cares, but it's just an old memory. Each time they were fed, they rang a bell. And so they'd feed the dog, ring a bell at the same time. Feed the dog, ring a bell. And they only had to do this a handful of times. Then if they just rang the bell with no food, the dog would salivate because the dog had already formed the association between bell ringing and food. The dog was trained to associate the bell with food. We are unavoidably trained to associate touch with sex. It's a very frequent association. People touch us, they want sex. It happens so often that now when we're touched, sexual thoughts often result, just like a salivating dog. So if the sexual thoughts occur to you, you don't have to go, "Oh my gosh, I want to have sex with this person." Not necessarily. It could just be kind of a unconscious natural reflex. But then it's entirely up to us what we do with the thoughts. We can indulge them, feed them, nourish them, and yeah, we can turn it into sex for sure. Or we can just simply set them aside and go, "Ridiculous. I'm just enjoying being loved by this person." You continue. So, do I be honest about this confusion between, with sex and touching? Do I be honest to the person who touches me? Depends. Depends on the depth of their emotional and loving maturity. If you said that to most people, they wouldn't know what to do with that. If you said, "When you touch me, I want to have sex with you." Whoa, you'd either scare them off or they'd want to have sex with you. But if you say that to an experienced, wise person, that can actually be very healing. It's really fun, because I've got to watch people do it on many occasions, for somebody to say to a person who's holding them, "I'm experiencing sexual feelings." And then for the wise person to say, "Well, sure, of course you do. The only times when have you ever been held this closely and not had it be about sex?" Never. Well, there you go. So I'm not scared of it. We'll talk about it until it doesn't bother you. You didn't form the touching sexual confusion when you were an infant and breastfeeding. No, you were taught this confusion. So you can unlearn it. You can get unconfused. Here's a member who says, I don't know where to start. Every time I open my mouth, my husband loses it, goes crazy. I talk to him as sweetly as I can. I listen to what he has to say, but he doesn't feel like he's being heard. I reiterate what he says in a summation, and he says, I'm trying to make him sound ridiculous. I am at my wit's end attempting to understand him. Nothing I say or hear is right. All of our, quote, conversations, end quote, end in him yelling and throwing things and me crying and pleading with him to just tell me what he wants. 15 minutes ago, he left me threatening divorce, saying I'm the abusive one, making him feel stupid because I can't understand him. I don't want a divorce. I still love him. We have an infant child. We used to be happy. I just don't know where it all went so wrong. So let's look at kind of several elements here. You said we used to be so happy. Now you used to be so satisfied. Early in your relationship, the trading of imitation love was great. I love you. You're so beautiful. You're so handsome. You're so talented. You're so wonderful. That feels just wonderful. And you have an infant child, so that's just about how long it takes for the imitation love to wear off, or sometimes sooner. And now the two of you are in trouble. I mean, he's talking about threatening divorce. So your relationship's pretty miserable. At this point of unhappiness, it's not likely, when you're this far in the pit, that with a few words I'll be able to help you. I'm not saying that to be discouraging. I'm just being honest about what you can expect. Sometimes people call me, and I always tailor a potential solution to where they are. If they're just confused about a thing or two, somebody wrote me and they said, gee, I don't know what to do with victims. And I go, gee, funny, there's a whole book about that. There's their answer. But so I just recommend they get a book, and you get that for free. Go to the library, ask your library to buy it. But this is harder. I'm going to give you a partial answer. Just want you to know that we're probably not going to solve this all at once. You said that you were at your wit's end. That's desperation. That means that even though you talk to him, in your own words, as sweetly as you can, you're afraid and you're irritated, and he feels it. You're just not able to listen to him. I know you try, but you couldn't be, not if you're at your wit's end. If he feels ridiculous when you talk, then it's virtually a certainty that somehow you're criticizing him or defending yourself. Just virtually sure, even though you're doing your best. So it's almost a guarantee that you're going to need help from somebody who can listen to both of you separately and together as you talk, so that they can help you understand what you're both doing and what you could do differently. So hire a coach for a while. Get a coach for an intervention. You're pretty far down the path of being lost, and you've got an infant child. Don't wait until the wounds are beyond repair. And now you have 4 kids. I got a call just today. We're miserable. We're fighting. I'm calling you from jail. I'm not making this up. We have 6 kids, and what do? That would have been better to do when there was 1 child and the child was an infant. Then you have 6 kids, and one of them's going off to college. So nobody to blame. It's just beyond the solution of a few wise words in a book. Because, like again, you said, you're talking as sweetly as you can. You're doing everything you can do, and it's not working. So something significantly more effective has to be done. That's all. I saw Valerie and Mark. He had cheated on her several times, and they both had terrible childhoods. This is not an unusual story. It's a complete mess. Constant accusations, doubt, resentment just appeared to be utterly unresolvable. So what do? Often a building gets to the point where making repairs becomes far more expensive than simply tearing it down and starting over. Far more. They go to build a new office building, and here's this old building. It's only been there for 30 years. And they just decide that with heating and air improvements and so on, just get rid of it. One of my favorite planes in the whole world to fly in years ago was the Lockheed, the L-1011. Gorgeous plane, great big thing, a whole lot like the 747, except not 2 decks. Roomy, comfortable, and while they were still entirely serviceable, I mean, they had 20, 30 more years left in them, they just junked them, stuck them out in there's a place in the desert not too far from Tucson where they keep tens of thousands of old planes out in the desert because they don't deteriorate very quickly. And they mothballed these things because they were too expensive to run, too expensive to maintain. The fuel efficiency was too low, and so on and so on. They just replaced them with new planes, even though the initial cost was huge. Same is true with many relationships. You can repair them or you can start over. That's what I suggested to them. Move on from this mess. Learn how to love from the beginning and start over with this ingredient that you've never had before. So I suggested to them that we work by phone every single day. By phone, by Skype, by whatever. Why every single day? It's pretty common that I will tell people if they want to work with me, I'll tell them, I'll either work with you every day or I'll work with you not at all. Because working with you now and again, it's like practicing the piano now and again. It's like practicing tennis once a year. Why bother? You're not going to get any better. We have established patterns of behavior over decades, and we're not going to change them with little half-hearted occasional efforts. No. It's going to take establishing an entirely new pattern of behavior. And you don't establish patterns of behavior with intermittent attempts. So every single day to practice a new way of living. It's the only way to change habits of decades. And the younger we are, the more moldable. But most of us, by the time we ask for help, we've already kind of become entrenched. So then it takes even more regular work. I work with concrete fairly regularly. In fact, in the last several weeks, I worked with concrete a lot. And very early on, when you pour concrete out of a mixer, it's really moldable, almost like oatmeal. It stays moldable for depends on the temperature, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, if you poured it at the right consistency, you can't do a whole lot with it. You can kind of smooth the surface, but you can't move it around. And after 2 hours, you're pretty screwed if you want to make a change in the concrete. And after a day, it's impossible. You'd have to get a jackhammer. And people are like that. Early on, we're more moldable. And that can be either early on in childhood or early on in starting over. So it sounds almost impossible to do, but the people who are willing to do this have seen some pretty striking results. I tell them, pretend you don't know anything. Actually, you don't have to pretend. I'll help you. You don't know anything. Everything you're doing isn't working, so it's not real hard to make the stretch to you don't know anything. So, no memory of the past. You have no knowledge. You don't have the ability to choose spit. You have no anything. No pain, no fear, no anger, nothing. We're going to start over. The past has to stop right now. Love is the only thing I know that changes pain and anger and fear. So we're going to start over with that ingredient. She wrote back. She said, I'm vacillating. I forgive him, then I won't. I go back and forth. I don't forget easily. I have a very good memory, she says. Our memories are very selective. She said, I can remember childhood friends' phone numbers, so I'm not sure I can forget the things that he's done. It's not about that kind of memory. It's about changing your entire notion of how the world is. It's about changing your perspective. It's about changing your set of beliefs. All your resentment is based on a belief that he's been hurting you intentionally. Really, it is. For example, let's say you got a Down syndrome child and somebody calls and they give the Down syndrome child a phone number that you need to know. Well, they'll listen to the number. The likelihood that they'll write it down is small, and if they keep it in their head, they won't remember it for as long as it takes to hang up the phone. So would you be irritated with the kid because they didn't deliver the message to you? No, because they didn't do it on purpose. The kid is intellectually impaired. It's who the kid is. They can't help it. You would not get angry at a retarded child. No, we get angry when we think people are doing something to us, and they meant to. Mark, your husband, has not been able to help what he's been doing to this point, and you keep glossing over that again and again and again. I say it, but you don't hear it. Emotionally speaking, he's an idiot child, but you keep blaming him for not acting in according with some standard of knowledge that he doesn't have. But he has been acting in accordance with the knowledge that he really does have. He's been emotionally crippled from childhood until now, but you've expected him to behave as though he were not crippled. So when I say crippled, you hear it as an excuse for him to keep hurting you. No, it's just an explanation of his past. You haven't been hearing me as I've been describing your husband. He's just a dumb kid. And you're as deaf on this subject as he has been emotionally crippled. So pay attention to the truth about him, and you can forget. It's not about memory. It's about changing your perspective. But you won't change it until you do change your perspective. You said, I can train myself to focus on different things, but the memory still lives in my brain somewhere. If asked, I can usually find it. I do hear you about being all the way in or out. I also heard you when you said focus on me, not him. That will take some training, but in my soul, I know it's good advice. This I really want to work on without hesitation, but you're right on all counts. Well, once in a while that happens. You said that this is a lot to reprogram. I can even hear your voice now telling me to get out of my head. That's not what's going to help. No, it's not. And it's not especially hard. It's about changing perspective like we talked about. You make it hard. The truth isn't what's hard. Fighting the truth is hard. Because you want him to suffer for what he's done to you, honey. You really do. We deny it, but you do. He didn't do it to you. He just did this to help his own pain. It's so much easier to let things go when we see them for what they are. One lady who just kept wanting her husband to suffer and suffer and suffer, and I went into the next room, went into the kitchen, I brought back a great big butcher knife, and I said, so tell me where to start. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, you want him to pay, you want him to suffer, so where do we start? Fingertips? Cut off his hand? Start at the elbow? What? At what point when I cut off enough of him will you be satisfied that he suffered enough and let this go? Eventually she got the point and let it go and started over. This was a phone call. Kind of has some similarities to the one we just talked about, but again, we're going to take it in a different direction. We learn a lot sometimes by dealing with similar things and then just seeing them from a different perspective. A lady called and she said, I want to kill my husband. I said, well, I understand. I've heard you be frustrated and angry over and over and over and over. I said, so why do you choose to stay this way? She said, I don't choose it. I'm frustrated because he, big emphasis on he, and I said, oh, no, honey. You keep insisting that because of him, you have to keep feeling like that. But you don't have to keep feeling like that. And then she started in with blah, 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 and that he was bad, 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 bad. I said, you're not listening, dear. She said, you're telling me that my feelings aren't valid. Oh, this is such a classic victim ploy. They say with tears in their eyes, you're telling me that I don't know my own feelings. No, sweetie, I said, you really are in pain. I'm not telling you that's not valid. I would never tell you that you're not feeling pain. But your pain is based on a lie. You think he's doing this to you when he's not. He's just in pain himself and he's not capable of caring about you. She said, you're not listening to me. I said, well, oddly, I didn't call you. This is what victims do. They don't want to learn. They want what they do to be validated. They want their feelings validated. They want their beliefs validated. Why? So they can stay in them. Now, why would they want such a thing? So they can avoid responsibility. It is the primary motivation of every victim. If victims can convince themselves and other people that they're victimized, the problem is never, never them. Their feelings are real. Her pain is real. I got that. Just like the feeling of falling in love is real. But it's not happiness. So victims experience real pain, but it's unnecessary and it's based on a lie. So if you really care about victims, you don't just sit and listen to the same story over and over and over again. I get this question from some coach around the country every other day. What do I do with this victim who completely takes over our group? You have to stop them from telling the same story over and over. Because you're sick of them? No, because they're dying of victimhood. Dying, no kidding, life or death. So let's apply this victimhood thing, just for fun, to the story, classic story that we've told many times of the drowning man. So he's screaming and dying. And you row up in a boat and you offer to help. But he doesn't get in the boat. No, the victim screams somebody threw him into the water. Okay, fine, boring, but fine. So you offer your hand again. And he screams, while still in the water, this is not my fault. You're kidding. Sometimes with victims, when you find yourself shaking your head when you're talking to somebody, you're talking to a victim. He screams that it's not his fault. Okay, again, fine, but boring. Who cares how he got there? So you say to the victim, take my hand. Just shut your mouth and take my hand, because they keep telling you it's not their fault and it's somebody else's fault. So you reach out, they take your hand for a moment, which is what victims do. You start to pull the victim into the boat. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been into the water and been pulled into a rowboat. It hurts because there's this rigid little gunnel, it's called, spelled gun whale, of a rowboat. And if you're pulled over it, it feels like you're having the paint scraped off you. So you start to pull him into the boat and he screams that you're hurting him and throws himself back into the water. See the cycle? Victims stay in the water so that they can keep blaming people. They actually get a kick out of it. I said to a lady just the other day, she said, but I do want help. And I said, no, you really, really don't. What you want to do is say that you're asking for help and then reject and attack everybody who tries to help you. So you tell them, you're pulling me too hard over the side of the boat. When you throw the rope out to me, you threw it over my head and it happened to land on my ear and ow, it hurt. Or you threw out the rope and what I was looking for was a yellow rope, not a blue rope. Victims love to do this. It's like life is a circus for a victim. So at some point with victims, you have to say, hey, you're being stupid. This is killing you. You're dying. Just take my hand. Now, at that point, they will say, but, rope's the wrong color, did it the wrong way, the side of the boat's too high, but you just keep repeating, take my hand or don't. But that's the only choice, because I'm not going to sit here and listen to you go on and on and on about how you've been victimized. Because it doesn't matter how many times you say, I'm in the water, I want somebody to help me. That alone will never, ever get you to the shore or get you into a boat. Doesn't help. You're either getting undrowned or you ain't. Talking about it is nothing. Here's a man who says, no, we ran out of time. It's impossible. So I guess we did. I never would have guessed. I was having such a good time. So we've run over time. I've had a wonderful time. We will see you in a week. Send me your questions. And remember, it's all about feeling it, finding it, feeling it, trusting it, and believing it. Stick with the feeling. See you next Tuesday.